Okay, we are live, but we got to let it breathe just for a moment while we make sure all of our awesome community members are able to catch the stream. We're grabbing Facebook. I got to always remember now, with Instagram, you've got that extra step. So bear with me, guys, just 1 second. We're going to get things rocking and a rolling. Trust. You know how we do things around these parts. Hang tight, almost there. One last little copy paste, and it's all over. There we go. Bada bing, bada bang. All right, and we are almost, just about. Come on now. Welcome in, everybody. It's the Mile High Huddle podcast. I'm your host, Chad Jensen, and with me, my fellow football priest, who you know, who you love, Zack Kelberman. Zack, let's just get to the let's cut to the chase here. You had a story for us after Sean Payton revealed his belief on Tuesday that Courtland Sutton would be attending next week's mandatory minicamp, and he revealed today, yes, I will be. I'll be there. Your reaction?
I can't say I'm too surprised. Like, you and I speculated he might bet on himself and eat the money, the 100,000 or whatever in fines. But ultimately, this was always the most logical resolution, Chad. Occam's razor, because George Payton, Sean Payton, all along they expressed nothing but hopeful confidence that Courtland Sutton would be in camp and practice at some point. And I figured that once Sutton tweeted about the Riley Odoms and Steve Foley inductions into the Ring of Fame and saying that he wants to win a Super Bowl in Denver, I kind of felt like the tide was turning a little bit.
Indeed. And he took some time. I guess I'll just pull it up. He took some time in this statement he made via DNVR to explain. Here's what he said. Well, I guess let's just play it. Let's just show the peeps. I mean, it's not that long. It's only about a minute long, and I think it will be good to edify. What's going on? Where to go? Oh, hello, Jensen. Let's go. Punch in, as my dad would say. Punch in. Okay, here we go. And bada bing. Hey, just confirm once I hit play, Zach, you can hear it.
Are you going to be at mandatory minicamp next week?
I will be there. A small tidbit. It's been killing me not being able to be at OTAs, man. This has been a very different off season than I've been a part of since I've been in the league. Anybody that knows me and anybody that's played with me understands that I love this game, man. I love the game of ball. I give any and everything that I possibly can when it comes to the preparation, when it comes to the competition of football, man. I'll give, man. Keeping it PG, but boys know the saying. Boys know the saying. I will give that up to be able to get us back into the playoffs and to
go something like this. I would give my left
Super Bowl and to be able to go out and do what we know we're capable of doing for this organization and for this city. No one deserves this more than this city. To be able to go into games where we're sitting in a situation where we are possibly out of playoffs and walking into a stadium that's pretty much sold out, and to know that the city has so much love for us that even when we're down bad, they continue to show love for us. It's like it's only right for us to come in and give them what they deserve, and the city deserves playoffs. The city deserves to see the Denver Broncos back in the Super Bowl.
Are you going to be?
Yeah, I mean, a couple things I want to talk about from that real fast. Zach, what do you make of his use of language where he says, "It's been killing me not being able to be at OTAs," as if some external force is tying his hands from attending a, albeit voluntary, off-season training program.
We'll never confuse Courtland Sutton with an expert orator. Like, he needs a couple of media classes for sure. I don't know that it's all believable when he says it was killing him. No player wants to be out there sweating for voluntary practices, wearing shells. They want to, at least get it going in training camp. So I think him having the time off, he enjoyed for his body, and he had ankle surgery after the season too. So I'm sure he was happy to let that mend. But I take the rest at his word, though. He wants to help bring the Broncos back to contention. He wants to appear in a playoff game or at least have a winning record. But I don't buy the fact that it was killing him, Chad, to be away from voluntary practice.
Right. Let's see what the peeps have to say. Like the Papa Bear. So great to see you tonight, David. Hope you're doing well, big dog. He says, good evening, Broncos country. Chad, Zach, and Deacon Scott, 12-5. Hashtag Buckham, MHH for life. Denver Broncos for life. Bo knows Knicks for 6. Sutton and Minicamp next week. Heck yeah, brother. Yeah, the band pretty much back together in that respect. And then, as we learned, Zach, from the reporting of Jeremy Fowler last week, the expectation based on his sources is that the Broncos will go ahead and make Sutton happy right about when kind of they're up against a deadline, which is, it's not a real deadline, but training camp. So, it's if he comes there all smiles and good and does his job and whatnot, which he will, then I don't foresee, Zach, anything forestalling the Broncos from just saying, here's 2.5. I mean, according to the reporting, all he wants is $2.5 million or so to $3 million. More on top of his $13.5 million salary, and he wants more than the $2 million currently. He only has $2 million guaranteed of that $13.5 million, which gives the Broncos a lot of wiggle room if they wanted to duck him, bounce him, whatever. He wants a little security. So not only a raise, Zach, but make a larger portion of my 2024 salary guaranteed. That's not asking the world for the richest owners in professional sports, and you have enough wiggle room to just get it done.
I honestly wouldn't be surprised if in the next day or two or before minicamp starts, if it comes out that the Broncos did rework his contract or at least kick him a few extra $1 million. I wouldn't be surprised, Chad, if the impetus for Courtland Sutton to say this today was knowing that the Broncos have a deal where they're going to, reward him or at least show a good faith gesture. But we've been in agreement about that. I don't think with the contracts around the NFL, Jalen Waddle, Justin Jefferson, that giving Courtland a couple million more is going to sink them. I think he's earned that.
Sam Bam, thank you, my friend, for jumping in early with a very generous super chat. He says, evening, guys. Glad the Courtland drama might be coming to an end. Also, I'm going to ask Broncos country to put some good vibes on my Mavs in the finals. I'll be at game 3 next week in Dallas. Go Broncos, go Mavs. Well, there you go, guys. That's his ask. Mavs in the finals this year. Very interesting. Luka Doncic, going to be interesting to see how it shakes out. Boston, Dallas. We'll see.
I'm just happy the Lakers are out. I'm happy the T-Wolves are out. Got to avenge the Nuggets in some way, Chad, around these parts.
Indeed. Thank you, Sam. And best, I'm always partial. Just kind of like Zach with the Super Bowl. Being a kid of the 80s, I remember what it was like going into a Super Bowl. The AFC team was almost like you just didn't even have a chance. And it wasn't until the Broncos snapped that streak, the NFC's long-standing dominance in Super Bowl 32, that the tide turned and it became a more balanced thing, the Super Bowl, where, hey, you never know what's going to happen. But, with the exception of the Patriots, during the multi-decade run of Belichick Brady, and then now lately I have a hard time rooting for the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. You know how it is, but I almost always would root AFC, even if the Broncos weren't in the Super Bowl. And I do the same in NBA. I'm always rooting for whoever the Western Conference team is. Taylor says, and great to see you, big dog. Thank you, bud. He says, glad Sutton is attending mandatory minicamp, and his comment on, yeah, he's going to be there, Zach.
And his comments on Taylor, thank you. His comments on Bo Nix, I thought it was interesting as well, Chad. You can probably pull it up, but the long and the short of it, he said he spoke to Bo Nix after Nix was drafted and gave him a little insight as to what to expect entering the NFL. He said that he's looking forward to getting there and working with them, and he thinks that Bo Nix could bring the Broncos a lot of good things, as you and I tend to believe.
Yes, indeed. The sooner he gets there and gets crack-a-lacking on that chemistry, the better it's going to be for Mr. Nix. But in the wake, we haven't talked to the peeps here, Zach, since Monday. And there have been a few notable things that have happened since then. Obviously, Tuesday, Zach Wilson got his chance to run with the ones, and it just so happened to be for the first time this offseason an OTA practice the media was able to watch that wasn't a Bo Nix day. It was Zach Wilson. He reportedly did not do too well, but that did not stop Sean Payton at the podium after practice singing his praises. Like, he seems to be still quite happy that they were able, the Broncos, to get that trade done with the Jets. Especially, Zach, you look at what, the Jets are paying a good chunk of his 2024 salary. Like, it's a pretty low risk, high upside deal, even if the plan is for him to hold a clipboard in 2024 for the most part. The arrow, I think, still is pretty safely trending toward Bo Nix being the starter.
I don't think there's any upside to Zach Wilson, Chad. I mean, Bo Nix went through a practice for a rookie. He looked pretty good leading the offense. Jarrett Stidham played safe football in practice, didn't hurt them. You have Zach Wilson in there. He throws a pick, predictably. The guy who has more interceptions in his career than touchdown passes threw a pick in training camp, or a minicamp, excuse me. But this is what Zach Wilson is. And I don't really care what Sean Payton has to say about him, because Zach Wilson's going to reflect Sean Payton. And we know Payton's ego. But when you get the former number 2 overall pick for what was it, a 6th and 7th round pick swap, you know what you're getting. You get what you pay for, Chad, and the Broncos got a lemon in Zach Wilson. Nothing's going to change there.
Yeah, I mean, the best predictor of future and all that stuff is the past. But I will say this, and I've had to go back to the well and really do my research and remind myself of Sean Payton's track record with quarterbacks. And you can go all the way back to his first offensive coordinator gig, which was with the New York Giants. You remember that Kerry Collins team that outkicked its coverage and got destroyed by, what was it, the Ravens, the Baltimore Ravens, and the Ravens Super Bowl, right? The one everybody talks about, the main one, not the Joe Flacco one. And then, beyond New York, he goes to follows Parcells, Dallas, and as quarterbacks coach, Quincy Carter produces a 10-win season for the Cowboys. You're going, what the Sam Hill? Then just when he decides to say adios, and I'm going to go take my, upward mobility opportunity here with the Saints and be the head coach, the quarterback, the undrafted kid who happened to hail from the same alma mater, Eastern Illinois, as he did, explodes, takes the job from the tenured veteran, the well-paid, wealthy Drew Bledsoe, and Tony Romo blossoms in 2006, kind of emerges, and the Cowboys now have a franchise quarterback. Thank you, Sean Payton. Then he goes to New Orleans that same year, and what happens? Drew Brees, guess what? Resurrected off the trash heap, Pro Bowl, and first-team All-Pro. 3 years later, they're winning the Super Bowl. And then we all know what happened in between with the Saints, mainly toward the end of Brees' career when Father Time started causing him to miss some games and whatnot. Jameis Winston, Teddy Bridgewater, Trevor Siemian. I always forget the BYU kid's name, dude. What is it?
Taysom Hill.
Thank you, Taysom Hill. So the kid, this is a very, very, forgive me, long-winded way of saying that track record. To me, it's like, hey, any quarterback that goes under his wing, if he is turned to and utilized, in the regular season, they look the best they'll ever look as a quarterback with Sean Payton. And even last year, maybe not so with Russell Wilson, the best he's ever looked, but clear upgrade over what he produced the year prior.
Thank you so much, Ronk, as always says. Good evening, Chad and Zach on the MHH podcast. Go Broncos. As I said, as Chad always says, thank you so much for being there. As Scott says, sunrise and sunset. Chad, nothing you said there was untrue. But here's my thing, and maybe you'll agree. I'm going to just say this. We'll get to Mike in 1 second. When Sean Payton was at Dallas, he had one focus, that was developing Tony Romo. When he was in New Orleans, he had one focus, that was developing Drew Brees. Right now, all of his focus should be on developing Bo Nix. They have a number 2 in Stidham. You don't need to spread him too thin by developing 2 quarterbacks. His 100% of his focus developmental-wise should be on Bo Nix. If Zach can't cut it by now, 4 years in the league, he is not going to cut it.
I don't disagree. We pounded the table for the Broncos to do the right thing, have the courage to do it the old-fashioned way, do it the hard way, and use their first-round pick on a quarterback. They did just so happen to be the quarterback who I still assert was the best schematically fit for Sean Payton. And so that has to be the priority. That has to be the focus. But sometimes, and so far I'm going to continue giving Sean Payton the benefit of the doubt, Zach, because we've been, and I'll speak for myself, I have been bitterly disappointed, like I'm being gaslit or I'm like taking crazy pills by the organizational decisions at multiple points in the post Peyton Manning era in Denver. I was really concerned. I'm like, oh man, they're going to miss the forest for the trees once again. They're going to take an edge rusher at 12 or something. They did do the right thing. That leads me to believe Sean Payton also is a reasonable NFL guy. He knows what's up. It will be Bo Nix. Will it be Bo Nix week 1? That to me is what I think is still fairly up for debate, but he's 24. You don't draft a 24-year-old Bo Nix, the guy with the most college starts in NCAA history, to have him chill on the bench for a year, So, but that's assuming everything goes according to plan. You can't foresee always, Zach, obstacles and setbacks, things that come up. And I'm not even talking about injuries. Like, sometimes rookies don't perform the way you want them to, or a veteran takes it as a huge chip on the shoulder and turns in just a whirlwind dynamo training camp. And you just go, look, I can't not go with this guy. I don't foresee that happening though, Zach. It's going to be Bo Nix. It's been as advertised so far.
100%. Yeah, we're in agreement there. And sorry, Mike, for skipping you a second ago. Mike says with a $10 super thank you, as always, Mike. Good evening, gentlemen and Broncos country. Watch that interview with Sutton. I feel better about him being a Bronco. Was feeling that he was unhappy because of Russ being gone. Go MHH, go Broncos. Thank you, Mike. You're right. And he also said, Chad, again, I can't remember the exact comment, but basically that Russ got a bum rap in Denver and he kind of took up for Russell Wilson. I thought that was interesting because one narrative that we defended when Russell Wilson was in town was that, oh, he's so toxic, he's so cancerous, no teammate likes him. And that turned out to be misinformation. And Sutton kind of confirmed that today.
Yeah, I don't think, look, the biggest thing with Russ and what Sutton said, etc., only adds to the veracity of what I'm about to say, was that he just wasn't the player the Broncos thought he was. As a player, as a leader, I don't think I think he had credibility in that locker room. Unfortunately, though, Zach, what tends to happen over time is you can be the world-renowned guy. You can be the guy that shows up into a new room having a Super Bowl ring and, 9 skins, Pro Bowls on the wall, so to speak. And so guys will follow you. They'll listen. What you say will resonate. But over a vast number of games and sample size and time where that leadership and all your catchphrases and your quarterback speak and all the stuff isn't coming out in the wash, it's not that people don't like you. It has nothing to do with that. He was obviously a well-liked guy. It's just that you start to lose credibility. And that was simply, Zach, a natural byproduct of him not being the quarterback the Broncos thought they were getting when they made that trade. I wish him the best. Courtland Sutton, Zach, was obviously displeased and kind of left to say, wow, what is happening with my future, the future in Denver, including mine, when they decided to not only move on from Russ, right? He had that when the news first broke, we all expected it to happen. But when the news first broke in January, Broncos are expected to release Russell Wilson. Didn't happen, of course, till March, but what did he do? He had an Instagram story, did Courtland, right, basically kind of offering up a bizarre sort of farewell to Broncos country. And everyone's like, what? Then, of course, further casualties. Not only is Justin Simmons released, Josie Jewell's not brought back, other kind of passive aggressive things that Sutton's done on social media. That was well before, Zach, the Broncos ever got to OTAs, right? Then it goes from passive aggression to aggression, where he's like being quite clear in what he's asking, what he's doing. I'm not showing up to OTAs for the first time in my career as a healthy player. The Broncos got the message. They'll get him paid. And it's really encouraging, Zach, to hear what he had to say about Bo Nix, because you want to believe that after the bond he had with Russ, and of all those receivers that Russ played with in Denver, obviously he had a thing for Sutton. I mean, talk about force feeding the ball. And they had that magic in the money situations when the chips were down, the 10 touchdowns. If I'm Sutton, I'm bummed about losing the guy that helped me produce that. I play a quarterback-dependent position. I got to be on board with this new guy. First of all, is there going to be a push to get a bona fide new guy? Or am I looking at a 2024 season with Jarrett Stidham as my guy? And the Broncos said, no, Bo Nix, here you go. And Bo Nix gets the rubber stamp from Sutton. That's good news.
Yeah, this is Sutton's full comments on the DNVR podcast. Quote, I'm excited to see what Russ does this upcoming season with Pittsburgh. I think he's going to have a lot of success. And he said that Russell Wilson got a bad rap. So there you have it. And I think you're right on the money, Chad, as to why he's sticking up for him. Sutton's coming off. If he wants a new contract, it's going to be because he set a career high with 10 touchdown catches last year. And why was that? Because like you said, Russ moonball after moonball after moonball, force feeding it to him. And he was the benefactor.
Indeed. And what's bizarre about that is the force feeding of Sutton his first year in 2022 did not pan out. Like they just couldn't quite get on the same page as much as you wanted to see that relationship come to fruition. It ended up being Jerry Jeudy eclipsing him and having that great last 5-6 games to end the 2022 campaign where people kind of, I mean, I don't want to be too absolute here, but you know what I mean by saying kind of forgot about Courtland Sutton. Now everyone's anticipating Jerry Jeudy having this huge 2023 season. We all know how that played out, but it will be interesting to see how Russ does in Pittsburgh. I don't expect a lot, but players who are doubted, pushed into a corner, if it's a good fit for him scheme-wise, we'll see if it comes out that way, but I wouldn't be surprised. It wouldn't shock me, Zach, if Russ goes on to have a solid season and the Steelers do something this year, just because, again, best predictor of future is the past. 9 of his 12 seasons, he played amongst the very best in the NFL. So who knows? Why didn't it work out in Denver? I think Father Time obviously had a lot to do with that, but there were a lot of other extenuating circumstances. The Nathaniel Hackett thing, giving him too much power in 22, the imperfect fit with the new head coach, Sean Payton. So who knows? Maybe he lands on his feet in Pittsburgh, Zach, and Courtland Sutton's right, and he goes on to remind everybody who Russell Wilson is, but I don't expect it.
Don't forget, there was also those swirling trade rumors that Sutton was going to end up in Pittsburgh joining Russell Wilson. So maybe he's keeping those bridges not burnt. You brought up 2022, though. Ironically, remember that godforsaken Colts loss, Chad, on Thursday night to the ghost of Matt Ryan? The one time, that's when he forced the ball to Courtland Sutton. Wasn't KJ Hamler waving his hands wide open in the end zone or whoever it was? So, yeah, you're right. They went through a period where they couldn't connect, and they went through a period where they were doing nothing but connecting at the expense of the rest of the offense.
It's true. And they're Pittsburgh, just like we do in the offseason when you don't have things going on, different kind of storylines that you might not otherwise spend a lot of time on end up getting a lot of scrutiny. One of them is Courtland Sutton. Find a way to get Courtland Sutton in Pittsburgh. Find a way to get Courtland Sutton for Russell Wilson. Another thing I don't expect to see. The Broncos, I think, want to keep Sutton around, but we shall see. Lawrence Rivera, what's up, big dog? Thank you for the super chat. My brother, he says, if the flies on the wall could talk, that would be some good tea. I have a good idea what really happened. You got to remember, humans will be humans. Zach.
I'm assuming he's talking about Courtland Sutton's holdout from OTAs. Lawrence, please enlighten us if you could. I don't really get the drift that you're putting out there. I assume that the Russell Wilson ego, I don't know. Clarify. I don't want to sound like
and it wasn't only 3 minutes ago, so we were on the Russ subject there. So yeah, it would be interesting if flies could talk. Maybe what he's getting at is our original topic about Russ not being his name not being mud in the Broncos locker room, like a lot of national kind of rumors and all that would lead you to believe, especially as he became a bit of a lampoon, Zach, over the 2 years as a Bronco.
Well, I mean, I don't want to speak out of school here. So, Lawrence, please clarify if you could. It doesn't have to be a super chat, but I want to just speak on what you're saying correctly.
Taylor jumping in again. Thank you, brother. He says, Zach, I agree on Zach Wilson. Not surprised on his struggles. Go Broncos.
Chad, it'd be like bringing in Drew Lock and if you're another team and then killing him for throwing a pick or that's who he is. That's who Zach Wilson has been over the course of his career. You can talk about the bad coaching. You could talk about this and that, but there's been plenty of other situations around the NFL where backups like in Cincinnati have come in and kept the offense going. Zach Wilson is incapable of doing that. They're wasting their time, Chad. I've said this before and I'll say it again.
We got the original Dizzy D, not to be confused with the trendy Dizzy D's that just come up with that name. This is the original Dizzy D. We love him. He's been with MHH a long time, kind of hit and miss when he shows up, but we remember you, Dizzy D. What's good, bro? He says, I would like us to bring in at least Mac tight end UFL to strengthen our tight end room and raise the ceiling, and Nix to Franklin all season long. Hashtag big duck energy. Indeed. Your thoughts, Zach?
It's interesting because you're going to see like an import of UFL players come to the NFL after the season's over. I think it's later this month. It'd be interesting, but you already have your project. I'd rather would give the reps here, Chad, a Lucas Krull, who Sean Payton keeps talking up and even compare to Greg Dulcich. You need a younger player in that room, but you also need, Dizzy D, a veteran. I mean, because I don't want Adam Troutman atop the depth chart for too much longer. You can't count on Greg Dulcich, and behind them is Lucas Krull. So if they're going to bring in anyone here, Chad, and later this summer, I would expect a veteran to come in.
A shout out here. We got DBronk1 on Instagram. Hey guys, thanks for all you do. Thank you, big dog. And anybody watching live on IG, if you have questions, we'll try and get one if you have any tonight before we sign off. It's been fun beginning to kind of cultivate our community that's just been kind of chilling, languishing on Instagram. The podcast, we've been bringing it to you on the reg now for about a week, so it's been really fun. Okay, Zach, let me shift some gears here. Get away from Russ a little bit, get away from Sutton and all that, and get to some of the other talking points and storylines out of Broncos OTAs this week, one of which is, I don't know why this happened to be a pressing question on the minds of, forgive me, I don't know who asked the question to Sean Payton, but is JL Skinner still a safety? Yeah, dude, that's like the only thing he can do. But you had the story for us. Explain that.
Yeah, I mean, basically, he was asked about his vision for JL Skinner, second-year safety, and Sean Payton confirmed, still a safety.
Still a safety.
Quote, this is going to be one of those, we talked about it during training camp, we're going to see a lot of when the pads come on, and we're going to see these team-run pass periods. Do we feel like he's better versus the run? Do we feel like he's better versus the pass? I do think he has good instincts. I say the second half of last season, even when he was running scout team, we noticed on offense quite a bit. Man, this guy all of a sudden was jumping routes. He was someone that stood out on the tape. I think he'll want to build on that. And it sounds all good, Chad. Then when you dig into the numbers, he played 10 snaps on defense in 2 games. And all George Payton did in January was say he was the scout team player of the week multiple times. Doesn't really bring me too much comfort. I mean, there's been talk of moving Skinner to like a dime backer role, keeping him more toward the line of scrimmage and like a Mark Barron role, for example, or a Sua Cravens, but it seems like he's going to play more safety, but he has his work cut out for him. You have Brandon Jones, PJ Locke as your starters, Caden Stearns, and Delarian Turner-Yell as your backups. He's right now safety number 5, Chad.
Yeah. And he is a former and a recent draft pick. He is a Sean Payton draft pick, but he's late round. He's 6th round pick, Boise State.
Yeah.
I still can't get beyond the fact that this is a career safety who didn't know who number 27 in an orange or blue jersey at Broncos HQ was on the wall. Lost hella points for that, but that's me just kind of being a little bit petty. But yeah, what was he? He was coming out of Boise State. JL Skinner was kind of known as a headhunter, big hitter, solid in run support. And if he's talking Sean Payton, they were seeing Skinner jumping routes on scout team and like really kind of developing as more of an instinctual cover guy. That's good to add to that skill set. But as you said, we'll have to see how it comes out in the wash, because long row left to hoe, a lot of dudes priority wise ahead of him on the depth chart. But if you've really got it figured out, things click, that doesn't hold guys back, because in the NFL, it's production based. If you look the best, if you're doing the best, they're going to play you.
Exactly. And as I wrote here, I mean, the dust is going to settle later this summer after training camp with the safety pecking order. And where Skinner lies is solely on his own volition. He can work up to being the primary reserve. Hell, he can compete for a starting job, Chad. There's nothing solidified behind Brandon Jones. But at 6'4", 220, he's kind of a tweener in the sense that he's a little undersized to play linebacker, and he's a little boxy or a little too big to play safety adequately. So it'll be interesting to see what VJ does with him. But again, with VJ's track record, not much confidence there either.
Also, we've got here our man down in Tucson proving every single day that Broncos country is not a geographic location. It is, in fact, a state of being. Phil McLaughlin in the house saying, good evening. Pretty sure Sutton was doing a good PR job with his statement. I will give him the kudos if he plays well this season. Well, definitely. You got a little bit of mud, as it were, Zach, on your face, PR-wise. Look, it's nobody at Broncos HQ is writing home per se on a veteran skipping voluntary OTAs, but the way it goes in the league, I mean, NFL clubs enjoy a 90+% attendance rate for voluntary portions of their OTAs from veterans by and large. I mean, traditionally. So even though no one's freaking out that Courtland Sutton's not there, it is obviously conspicuous. And fans don't like it. Fans obviously kind of see things a little bit differently. So Courtland Sutton's got to earn back a little bit of that love, a little bit of that shine. Best way to do that is just show up and do your thing. But that does explain somewhat some of the things that Sutton had to say.
Yeah, I mean, during this holdout, I said, wake me in July if Sutton's still holding out. I wasn't giving too much worry to voluntary practices. But we know this, Chad, working in this business for years now, and hopefully we can impart this knowledge to the fan base. A few months from now, or even weeks, if Sutton doesn't get hurt and he goes about his business and acclimates with Bo Nix and, resumes his stake as the wide receiver one, no one will remember the fact that he held out a voluntary practice. It happens every year. A lot of players around the NFL, life goes on.
I don't know. I still have a hard time forgetting Melvin Gordon not showing up to certain things. But, that's just kind of the guy he was. You and I'll be honest. Look, we all have our biases, okay? I'm sorry, grammar police. Our biases, all right? We didn't like that the Broncos gave Gordon the contract that they did when Phillip Lindsay was coming off back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. So it kind of he landed a little awkwardly, and that wasn't his fault, right? That was John Elway and the whole thing. But he just never changed that perception for me anyways with what he did as a Bronco. And then to add to that, the skipping of the OTAs. When you have a legendary mythical guy in Denver, Rod Smith, who was the spokesperson for veterans. Yeah, it's voluntary, but be here, that stuff. That's part of kind of Broncos fan perception of voluntary OTAs. Rod Smith's whole philosophy, it does and did kind of through osmosis and his example, it was imparted into fans and how they perceive it. But Courtland Sutton needed to grow some basketballs because Bo Nix needs a receiver like him. Indeed. And he's probably got that locked down and whatnot. Let me see here. Phil, of course, by virtue of his surname, also, Zach, reminded me of something that Sean Payton had to say about second-year running back, former undrafted free agent Jaleel McLaughlin, who it was kind of interesting. He talked about his, he's long applauded, I guess, complimented McLaughlin for his work ethic, being the first dude there in the morning, which is unusual for anyone that's not a quarterback, but especially a running back for whatever reason. He said, quote, I think what he wants to see from McLaughlin in year 2, I think continued growth. You see him protecting the football, and he's very disciplined as a change of pace route runner. I know he wants to continue to work on his role, Zach, in the passing game. And then he goes on again to talk about, by the time he's at breakfast. So first of all, he's here at 5:15 a.m. in the off season, and first one here running in the weight room. By the time he's at breakfast, most people are arriving. He's put in a good hour and a half's worth of work. It's just the way he's wired, and it's impressive. But Zach, your thoughts on McLaughlin, his ambition, it would seem, to be more involved in the passing game?
Well, first of all, you brought up Merlot, Chad, so I absolutely have to take this opportunity here. The difference between the situations, if you remember back when Gordon was holding out, he came out and said, I am not going to go to practice until it's mandatory because I don't want to lose the money. I mean, he put it all out there that he wasn't going to work for free or, let his purse get impacted. Courtland Sutton never came out and said that. There's been leaks that he's wanted a new contract and this and that, but it's, I think, different ways publicly that they handled it. About McLaughlin, you always want a player like that, like the Phillip Lindsay, the workhorse, the team player, first one out there, last one to leave. But you also love his skill set because except for Blake Watson, Chad, there's no one in the Broncos backfield that can do what McLaughlin can. And there were many times last season where he was the best Broncos running back on the field, and it wasn't even close. I am really excited what he can do in year 2 to be that Alvin Kamara light, super light as the pass catcher and the runner.
By the way, Mike, best wishes, thoughts, prayers to your mom. She'll kick its butt, no doubt about it. She'll kick the Koof's butt, no doubt about it. Of this, I do not doubt. So best wishes, thoughts, and prayers. Good, positive juju and energy going your way and that of your mom, my friend. But Zach, I love this. On one hand, you sympathize with a veteran who has millions and millions of dollars at stake by popping something like at a voluntary practice in the off season when there's nothing happening on Sunday. But Scott's apropos comment here in our private chat, a voluntary OTAs practice, right? It's voluntary, but so is playing time, meaning that's up to the coach's discretion. It's their decision, and there are many things that factor into who gets that playing time. So it's a good point.
I think in Sutton's mind, though, he's thinking, okay, well, who do the Broncos have that can replace me? Who do they have that can do what I can do, that I bring to the table? I mean, Marvin Mims, unproven. Josh Reynolds, more of a number 2, number 3. A couple other young guys, they're not in Courtland Sutton's stature. So I think that's where the own self-leverage comes from on his end.
Indeed. Getting a lot of love and props and prayers for the Ronks mama. So Keith chipping in, too, with some positivity there. Mike. Okay, Zach, a couple other things here. Any burning questions, guys, get them in the chat. We'll do our best to get to them before we dip on out of here. What was this expletive that PJ Locke dropped in description of the new Broncos defensive tackle, Malcolm Roach?
I want to say it's so bad, but it's a family-friendly program, so I'll refrain. He said he's crazy. So that's basically what how PJ Locke describes his former college teammate, by the way, one of many Broncos players that went to Texas and played together there along with Caden Stearns and I believe a few others. But praised the energy that he brings to the table, Chad. He praised his leadership. So did Sean Payton, who signed Roach from their time in New Orleans together. As I wrote in the article, this is like the new Derek Wolfe, the new mouthpiece, the new enforcer, the dog on defense that they've lacked for so long in the front 7.
Yeah. It's weird, dude, because you've got 3 safeties. You talked about the log jam that's ahead of JL Skinner at safety. 3 of those dudes are from Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And they all kind of, if not played together, they were all in that kind of crossing hemispheres touch. They were all around at the same time. PJ Locke, Brandon Jones, and of course, Caden Stearns. And then, yes, Malcolm Roach also hails from UT. So kind of interesting. And it's good to see, though, as far as Roach, some positivity coming out from his fellow players, even one with, we'll use the B word again, a biased perhaps opinion because of their history together and sharing an alma mater. But man, the Broncos needed some upgrades on the D line. And so far, the early returns would seem to suggest that they did.
I'll actually give George Payton credit for that. He came out after the season and said, we have to be better against the run. We have to be better along the defensive line. You went out and signed Roach. You traded for John Franklin Myers. You have Zach Allen coming back, DJ Jones. This is a much better defensive line group than a year ago, Chad.
Doug, no, not much as far as news coming out of OTAs today besides Sutton confirming his return. So there you have that. One other thing here, Zach, I wanted to get to is what Sean Payton had to say about Baron Browning, the rush linebacker, of course, and nothing too newsworthy out of it. I mean, they talk a lot, etc. You have like 5 conversations a day, do Payton and Browning. But I did think it was kind of interesting that he compared him. He said he reminds me a little of an Ohio State player the Saints had, Will Smith, who was a defensive end. Not the same kind of player. Yeah, they both rushed edge rushers, one from a 4.3, Will Smith. So he was like more in the 180 something, or pardon me, 280 something weight range, right? Like needed to have a little bit more weight on his bones. Whereas Baron Browning, sometimes you see him on the edge, and if you look away too quick, you're like, whoa, is that Von Miller? Like very similar body types, very similar twitch and speed. But he did say he reminds me a little of an Ohio State player, Will Smith, that the Saints had for years and years, Pro Bowler. Unfortunately, Will Smith no longer with us, was the gunshot victim in a road rage incident, unfortunately. But Peyton went on to say, I'm not saying that necessarily they played the same position. His personality reminds me a lot of the late Will Smith, Zach.
He was a damn talented player, Chad. Will Smith. It's such a senseless and tragic death. It sucks that it happened, but yeah, I mean, if Barron can be what Smith was in New Orleans, that would be your top edge rusher and someone that you can count on dependably. But I would want a little more ceiling. I feel like Smith was a very high floor player. Baron Browning's ceiling, Chad, could be almost that of the player that you mentioned, Von Miller. They look so much alike at times, and just it's on Baron to stay healthy and play a full 17-game schedule. If he can, I do foresee a breakout 10, 11, 12 sack season.
Question also from Doug, is the media allowed every day at minicamp? So I expect it to be yes. I mean, last year, all 3 days, media was able to observe practice. We haven't received a media brief for this year's mandatory minicamp quite yet from Broncos PR, but I don't expect that to change because it's kind of tied to certain strictures and rules the NFL has in place, etc. But yeah, you can expect there to be a lot of news and observation coming out of mandatory minicamp next week. And it will be interesting, Zach, to see just kind of how this quarterback competition is coalescing a little bit, because it's the last thing really until the NFL desert, right? The 6-week summer. And then you get the next thing is training camp. And so that's going to tell you which way the arrows are ticking, how the quarterbacks acquit themselves next week, June 11th through 13th.
Yeah, and the more reps that Courtland Sutton and Bo Nix can get down before the break, before training camp, the better, Chad. They need the chemistry, and it'll be really good to see the team hopefully with full attendance out there next week.
Obviously, Lawrence, I know you're tongue-in-cheek on this. Not the same Will Smith that physically assaulted Chris Rock on national television. Not the same guy. Two different guys. One was a prolific player. It's kind of a surprise, Zach. Former first-round pick Will Smith only ended up earning one singular solitary Pro Bowl nod his whole career. Very, very productive all that time in New Orleans. Died young, tragically, in the Saints Ring of Honor. I think there's this Ring of Honor, might be Ring of Fame. But Howie, thank you for the stars, big dog. I don't know what we'd fricking do without you. So good to see you, bro.
Thank you, Howie. And I'm looking up Will Smith's numbers right now, Chad. Except for a couple seasons, he played from 2004 to 2012. Only 2 seasons he had more than 10 sacks, double digits. Otherwise, he had like 6, 6.5, 5.5, 3. And that's what I meant by, like, for the most part, he was a high floor player, whereas Baron Browning could be a double-digit player every year. He could be a high ceiling player, again, if he just can stay healthy.
Just so different, a defensive end and a 4.3. I mean, they're still rushing from the edge, but alignment, body type, all those things change when you're, traditionally defensive ends in a 4.3 are like, half a defensive tackle, half what we perceive as an edge rusher, but almost always hand in the dirt. But yeah, one singular Pro Bowl for Will Smith, but he's in that team's ring. So he'll have that immortality forever. And RIP to Will Smith. All right, Zach, we're about out of time here. I mean, we're 44 minutes in, but we've covered a lot of ground here. Any burning topics, guys? Last call, because we got a few messages for you. Then we're going to dip out.
Can't believe it's been 45 minutes already. You guys make this incredible. Another tremendous installment of the Mile High Huddle podcast. If you're not doing so, please follow the podcast on Twitter at the MHH Pod. You can follow the main account on Twitter at Mile High Huddle, Chad at Chad and Jensen, myself at Kelberman NFL, and Scott, our producer, at Scout Kennedy. If you guys want some merch like we're rocking each and every podcast, check out mhhmerch.com and get you some. If you haven't done so yet, please drop us a like at facebook.com/milehighhuddlepod. You can follow us on IG at mile_high_huddle. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, make sure you're leaving your Football Priest a 5-star review for a chance to win some merch each and every single month. But if anything, y'all, boys and girls, please, please, please subscribe, like, and share this video and every video you see on the MHH channel. It really helps us grow and reach more Broncos fans. Just like you, baby. You're muted.
We got some a few last messages from some great superstars and supporters like Lawrence again. Yes, yeah. Will Smith had one slap. JK. I know, but this should be the year of broken records with the amount of games they have. We shall see. 17 games. Let's go. George Fox, bro, so good to see you, even when it's late at the 11th hour. Thank you for being with us. And then, of course, the Ronk, as he is wont to do each and every night, punctuating a great conversation that he has contributed to with some love and some stars on Facebook. So also shout out to Pearl. Hope you're doing well, Pearl. We also got William. Great to see you on Facebook, my friend. And everybody that's been with us tonight, you know we love you. Everybody on Instagram, appreciate you being with us. And we'll see you, Zach and I, Sunday night.
Have a great weekend. We will see you Sunday. Take care. And as always, go Broncos.